The show that brings politics back into our communities. I am Tim Boyum. Boy, the legislature back for a new session this week, and we wanted to take you on the road back into the communities to show what these lawmakers must represent when they come to Raleigh, the diversity of our state, from Murphy to Manteo, as they say. And we start here in the furthest western part of our state in the mountains. It's just days before Christmas. It's cold. We're in Franklin in the North Carolina mountains. Granted, they are hard to spot on this particular day. We're in the kind of place where a cat, a rabbit, and onion all meet on a street corner.
Hey, boy.
The kind of place where Karl Gillespie calls the bulls over for breakfast.
Come on, bull. They're not going to get you.
And they listen.
This is what we used to work cattle with, the bucket.
Karl Gillespie and his wife are both fifth-generation Macon County natives. The bull since I'm a city slicker. He's looking at me kind of weird. I don't know. Gillespie breeds Black Angus cattle. Farming here in the mountains looks different than down east. The terrain limits extensive row cropping, so you see things like blackberries, cattle, and, of course, Christmas trees. But like down east, the industry is changing and challenging.
Farming is not a get-rich-quick scheme. And farming, if you farm the way your grandpa farmed, you're not going to make it. The technologies that we have available to us has changed farming.
Like this electronic ear tag on his cattle.
That is that calf's or that bull's identification number that'll go with it for life. That was put in when it was born. And so every time that's an event occurs with that calf, every time it goes down the chute and it gets weighed, there's an RFI reader on our scale system. It reads that and logs that.
Gillespie has long owned a communications company, too. He's a techie at heart.
There's cameras everywhere here, and we have Wi-Fi, and you got as much internet here as you do in town.
Even this tiny old building, once a home for his wife's family, now a high-tech farm office in the middle of nowhere. So your wife's dad, basically, this was his house for a while.
Yeah, this is it.
That internet comes in handy for late-night legislative work on the farm, too. Yes, you heard that right.
This is my wife, Janet.
How are you? Nice to meet you. I'm Tim. It's time for a warm cup of coffee to sit down and talk about how a cattle farmer ended up in the state legislature. Turns out he can thank or blame a friend down the holler, now State Senator Kevin Corbin, the same friend who called him to run for county commissioner when Corbin ran for state house.
So he calls again. This is Jim Davis who's going to retire. I think I'm going to run for his seat. And I said, the first part of what I said was fine. I said, that's great. That's awesome news. But the second part, I probably shouldn't have said, and that was, just tell me what I need to do. And, of course, he followed up as, I want you to run for my House seat. And Kevin can be very convincing, and I appreciate him being convincing because it's been a great experience for me.
A great experience, but not an easy one. It's 312 miles to the legislature, one way.
If all goes well and I don't stop, I can get there in about 5 hours and 15 minutes. If I have any traffic or get gas and eat, I'm going to kill 6 hours or better. The one bright side to spending 10 to 12 hours a week driving is there's absolutely no reason that I don't call back everybody I need to call back.
The 60-year-old Republican with one term under his belt remains the most remote lawmaker in the state, something I asked about earlier in the day.
I have 4 counties, Macon, Graham, Cherokee, and Clay. All of my counties border another state. Some border more than one state. It's extremely rural. Most of my counties' seats are closer to 6 other capitals than they are Raleigh.
I think they feel more disconnected from Raleigh.
There's no doubt.
Representative Gillespie says the biggest issues mimic the needs of most rural areas: long-term jobs, health care, and broadband. On jobs, there's hope a trend during COVID continues benefiting the beautiful mountains.
One of the biggest keys for us in economic development, and there again, this is the same across all rural North Carolina, is development of broadband. Because there are so many jobs, more so because of COVID than before, that can be done remotely.
On the broadband front, the Federal Infrastructure Act is already helping.
I've been in the telecommunications business since the early 80s, and there's more infrastructure being built in this district than there has in my whole career.
While issues here are similar to rural areas statewide, there are unique and expensive challenges. Broadband's a perfect example.
Typically, it costs more to fix our problems. And just from a broadband standpoint, if you're plowing cable and bobbies, you're probably in the sand. If you're plowing fiber optic cable up here, you're probably in a rock pile. So, it costs 5 times as much to get that foot of cable in.
Spend some time, though, here in the mountains. You learn for centuries they have found a way to survive and make it happen. Representative Gillespie's great-grandmother made history here after staying at a motor lodge with her ailing husband in Arkansas.
The story is that she got back in the car and said, I'm going to build one of those in Franklin. And she was very determined. Her husband passed away years prior to that. And when we got back, she started building what became Henry's Motel, its first motel in Franklin.
That grit and sense of community, it's why Gillespie agreed to run for public office in the first place.
And Macon County has been very good to us over the years. And because we've always been in business, and they've always frequented our businesses, and without that, you'd have nothing.
Oh, if you get an email from him, don't think it necessarily came from his office in Raleigh. It might have come from his Western office.
I've sat on the floor of the legislature and voted on some very important policy issues for the state of North Carolina. Got my truck, drove home, logged in remotely to Raleigh, and nobody knows that I'm sitting here.
Well, the Bulls know he's sitting there.
Smile for the camera.
But they don't seem quite as moved by the unique nature of his district. Dad joke for the win.